And welcome, everyone. Wonderful to see you and be with you again. I am going to go ahead and get our YouTube stream up and running, and I think we are good to go. Welcome. Welcome to another month of Crystal Conversations with Mary Jo. I really do love these monthly live Crystal Q&A opportunities that I get to hear from you. I get to hear from you about the different questions that are arising in your crystal healing work. I have an opportunity to connect with people who are perhaps new to working with gemstones and crystals to support their own health and well-being. And so I guess because of that, I really appreciate all the wide variety of questions that come in. And I did get a lot of questions this last month. And so, as I have mentioned before, I am going to move through the questions as I am able. If we run out of time, no worries. I'll reach back out to the person that submitted the question directly, and then we'll revisit it next month, first thing. For those of you who are new to me and my work, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Mary Jo Feely, and I am the owner of Fourth Dimension Healing in Stillwater, Minnesota. And it's where I have a energy and crystal healing practice. I have a mentoring practice. I have a gemstone shop in my healing space that my clients and customers love to browse. And I like to spend time helping a person be able to kind of tune into the stone or stones that they are really sensing could be helpful for them. I also have an online shop. You can find a lot of these links below the YouTube posting that this video will go public in the next few days. One of the things I like about my online shop is that you can go and look up the stones that you have, learn a little bit more about them. I work with a practice that incorporates the elements of earth, fire, water, wind, and storm. And that may be new to you. So if it is, you can learn about some of that on my online shop. And you can also take a look at some of the other videos that I have at my YouTube channel that really dig a lot deeper into working with the elements as it relates to health and healing and how we can work with gemstones and crystals and the elements that they resonate with. Also the director of the Center for Crystalline Healing Studies, which is my online school. I've created a number of courses that are self-paced. They're blended, which means that while there is course content that you will be able to move through at your own pace, there are also points within the courses where you would pause your individual study and you and I would get together either in person or virtually for mentoring and for ongoing one-on-one support. So that, again, that you can explore a bit further in the comment section below the YouTube video once I get it posted. Today, I'd like to revisit and go a little bit deeper into talking about gem waters. Now, if you saw last month's video, I brought that question in at the end because I really wanted to start the conversation and start people connecting with this work that we're doing together here to help begin to kind of think about gem waters and how that might be practical to work with. And before I talk about the gem waters, I want to talk a little bit about working with gemstones and crystals and water a little bit more broadly. So we have gem waters, which is what you're going to learn how to do tonight. There is also something called a gem essence and a gem elixir. Now, if you decide that you really want to do in-depth crystal healing work with me, you can certainly take a look at my online school. I have a crystal healer certification program, and one of the components of that course is an advanced crystal healing course, which is, I will say, it's complex. There's a lot to it because if you want to become certified as a crystal healer, then you need to know your stuff, right? We need to be able to articulate how to work with gemstones and crystals. And it's in that course that I talk about and teach you how to create gem waters, gem essences, and gem elixirs. But I want to tell you what those differences are. And we're going to go backwards just a little bit. So here is something called a gem elixir that I made some time ago. This is very concentrated. If you have ever worked with the concept of homeopathy, that concept has this wonderful way of looking at things in the sense that less is more. The more diluted a homeopathic remedy is, the more powerful it is. And the same can be said for when we're working with a gem elixir. So an elixir starts out as a process where it is spending up to 2 to 4 weeks being exposed to the stones that are contained within the water. And then there are ways that it is even activated more deeply to really enhance its power. Typically, it's created at various moon phases. And so you can see that we can't possibly even get into this kind of more complex gem elixir just on our own. So that's a gem elixir. And actually, this is a mother elixir. It's extremely concentrated, and it is from here that I would take a few drops and put it in to water and dilute it, and it would become a gem essence. So a gem essence is part water and part preservative, because unlike a gem water that I'm going to tell you about very soon, this bottle can stay around for a long time because it has a preservative in it. And there are different ways to work with preservatives. Last month, I pulled out my trusty bottle of apple cider vinegar. This is a natural way, non-alcoholic way to bring in some preservative properties into working with gem waters and gem essences. And that I tend to like to work with vinegar more than something like a vodka. So the beauty of the gem essence is that you are able to have a concentrated dose, for lack of a better word, of gem water and be able to put just, let's say, a few drops into maybe some water you're drinking or a beverage and take that throughout the day. All of this is designed to be able to support you and your energy field being able to resonate and work with the frequencies and properties of the gemstones when you don't have the gemstones actively with you. So these are a little bit more complex and they take a while to create. I would say perhaps the fastest I would imagine creating a gem essence is a week, maybe 2 weeks. The elixir can take up to a month or longer. But today, I want to just review, or if you get a chance to see last month, talk a little bit about how to create a gem water. Gem water is very simple. And I have a few items that I'm going to bring out, and I'm going to show you how we would do this. First of all, I want to remind you that if you're working with creating a gem water, make sure that your bowls and your containers are very, very clean. And a good way to do it is run it through the dishwasher or pour some boiling water over that so that you're able to get that taken care of and really cleaned up. Somebody just joined us, and I'm just going to pop over here. I often have somebody else here helping to be able to let people in. There we go. That's okay. So we've cleaned these very well, so they're sanitized. For a gem water, you're going to want a clear glass bowl. You're going to want a clear glass jar, or it could be a small, let's say, a little juice glass. Notice that there is no label on this at all. We want to not have any lettering on there. So now you're also going to need some water. It can be spring water, it can be well water, it can be tap water. It's really up to you. Don't overthink the water, because if you live in the city and what you have is well water, or rather city water, then use it. That's okay. You're going to need a selection of stones. With a gem essence, it goes back to what is your intention, or rather a gem water, it goes back to your intention as to what you want this gem water to support you with. So if you're feeling perhaps like you really want to be grounded and settled a bit, you could work with a piece of ruby. These are actually some of my favorite stones that I pulled out here for this example. Here is a piece of charoite. I've talked about charoite before, and that's a lovely stone to work with. And here's a piece of Tibetan quartz. Now, any one of these could go into the gem water all by itself, although I really like the idea of blending stones together. So if you're going to blend stones for a gem water, allow yourself to not, again, overthink what you think you want to put in there, but rather, what are you getting a sense that you're drawn to? If you have a number of stones, then you can think about maybe 2 or 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the stones gently into the jar. What we're doing is creating gem water by way of the indirect method. A direct method would be putting the stones directly into the bowl and then pouring water on top of the stones and then drinking that water. I don't support that. Indirect works the same way. And remember, it's intention and it is the work that you're doing. What we're going to do is we're going to simply put that jar with your stone or your stones, and again, not more than 3, 2 or 3. Otherwise, you just have lots of energies going on, and that might be a little tricky. Then you're going to take your water, and you're going to fill up the bowl to the point that you want, as long as you don't pour so much water that it goes inside the stones. If it does, you're going to have to start over again. This is why I like to have a jar that's a little bit taller. And then you're going to want to cover this with something. So you can cover it with saran wrap. Sometimes I'll even use one of these silicone covers, because what we're doing is just basically keeping the dust out, right? And so we're just going to cover it up like that. And then we are going to set it aside. My recommendation is put it in the refrigerator. Yet, before you do that, I would like you to spend some time with the bowl with the gem waters that you're creating. So hold the bowl gently, and you can hold it comfortably. If you have decided that you have a really big bowl and it's too heavy to hold comfortably, then just leave it on the counter or on your table, and then place your hands around it. So what I'd like to suggest then is you come into your heart space, and you simply slow your awareness, your breath, falling into that place of setting the intention that you would like for this particular gem water. This will sit in your refrigerator overnight. Then in the morning, you will take the cover off, you'll take the stones out, and then you'll be able to drink this water. So now this is just a small bowl for demonstration purposes. You may want to have a larger container as well, and that's just fine. So if you are a Reiki practitioner, if you are a person who finds that you spend a lot of time with prayer and meditation, this would be a wonderful way to spend a little bit of time with that water, really helping to support and bring in that loving and compassionate and healing frequency that is coming from your heart center and your heart chakra. So that is how you will use it. And again, when overnight is done and you take this out, you can drink this and sip on it throughout the day. It's not terribly concentrated, and so you could drink all of that in one day. You should drink it within a couple days. If you decide that you really want to spend, maybe drink some of it now and maybe some of it in another day or two, you could add maybe a tablespoon of something like this apple cider vinegar. That would give just a little bit of a preservative effect to it. So it's really very, very easy and simple to create a gem water. You can even find water bottles that have a chamber inside where you can put different stones. Make sure though that they're not the kind that are designed for pieces of fruit or vegetables where they have like an infused area where the water goes through with a slit. It's got to be completely contained. Now I have a question that came in on the chat regarding water. Is it better to have water that is rainwater versus well water versus chlorinated city water? What does it matter? Yeah, and so that's a good question. You know, there is a lot of water out there that's advertised as spring water, and it's really not particularly pure. We can have well water that's contaminated. So you do want to make sure that the water you're using is the water that is safe to drink and perhaps you're accustomed to. If you have never had well water, it's going to taste different than your city water. So again, we're not overthinking things. And, you know, that's part of the work I do is like demystifying a lot of crystal healing myths. Find the water that works for you. I would not necessarily collect rainwater. There's just a lot of environmental pollution. I would say if you're going to want to work with water, have it either purified or spring water from the store or something out of your tap. Okay. So let me know via chat during this live stream right now, or you can send me an email or chat through my webpage later and let me know if you have more questions around creating gem waters. So that is what I'd like to offer at this time. So another question came in, and it says, last month you talked about Shiva Lingam, and this got me thinking about egg-shaped stones. Can you talk more about them? Okay, so this person who wrote in this question is talking about the Shiva Lingam, which is a very elongated stone that comes out of India, and it represents masculine and feminine energy. It is very helpful for supporting that connection with earth and heaven, and also that balanced energy within our energy field of being and doing, that kind of resting known as yin state versus the active, energetic energy of yang within the Chinese tradition. So now we're going to take a look at some of these egg shapes that somebody asked about. The egg shape, here is a piece of selenite. Hopefully that's in focus. It's a little tricky sometimes getting my camera to get in focus. This is a wonderful shape that helps radiate very gently the energy and the properties of the stones out in all directions. Let me see here, for example, is another stone. And it's really it's sharp, it's kind of edgy, a little bit more square. So that's not going to have the same kind of subtle energy diffusion of the healing properties of these stones in comparison with an egg shape. So when you're working with an egg shape, you are looking at that, again, balanced of anchored to the earth, connected to the heavens. You also are going to be mindful about which stone you are working with that's in an egg shape. So selenite is a stone that works very high up in the chakra column. It is a stone that is a wonderful meditation stone. It can be a stone that is used for scrying, and scrying would be, for example, of kind of staring into a sphere, and it's a process of meditation. And we may get to that at some point. And again, that's talked about in my advanced crystal course. So selenite would be a wonderful, gentle kind of permeating energy of the properties of selenite. Now here, for example, is an egg-shaped hematite. Hematite is almost as opposite as you can get from the selenite. It's very heavy, it's iron ore. It's very grounding. And when working with an egg-shaped piece of hematite, it would be a wonderful way to bring this kind of anchoring, solidifying, grounding energy of hematite and bringing it out in all directions. Again, bringing it so that it balances all aspects of our energy field. Just like the Shiva Lingam, the active yang energy on the right side often, and then the yin kind of reflective meditative energy on the left. So this would be, how do I anchor myself in a way that's balanced? You could work with a piece, for example, of hematite. Here is an example of a piece of rose quartz that has been shaped into an egg shape. Rose quartz is so soothing and so calming and so loving, and it really can help us be more mindful of taking care of ourselves and speaking kindly to ourselves. Just really, what messages do we give ourselves throughout the day? So here, let's say you really do want to work on some self-love and self-compassion and allow that to permeate your entire energy field. You could work with a rose quartz egg. Here is a piece of serpentine. Now, serpentine has this wonderful energy of connecting with the earth and moving slowly all the way up into all of the chakras, paying particular attention to the first three chakras, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus chakras, because those are the chakras that are really active and connected with our day-to-day life. So we could work again with an egg that's perhaps in a egg-shaped piece of serpentine to bring that kind of grounding and settling energy up throughout our entire energy field, yet again, emanating out in all directions and bringing in that balance. A final egg stone or egg-shaped stone that I wanted to show you tonight is probably one of my most treasured stones. This is an egg-shaped piece of corundum. Corundum is better known as ruby or sapphire. So corundum, when it is in its red hue, here we go, that is ruby. Any other color of corundum is going to be sapphire. And so ruby is very, very anchoring and grounding and nurturing of the earth. And yet again, it welcomes in this ability to be very balanced. And so these, I hope, show you examples of how to work with the shape of a stone. Particularly right now, we've been talking about egg-shaped stones, and bringing in the specific stone into the equation. So if you are really unsettled and you're very, let's say you have a big event coming up and you just need to get kind of settled down, perhaps working with a piece of hematite in the shape of an egg could be really helpful to kind of fill that whole energy field and your physical body with those properties. I think that could be really helpful. So I hope that that answers your question. Here's a question. I hear the word matrix used a lot with crystals, but I don't understand the term. Can you please talk about this? So matrix is a term that we don't necessarily really talk a lot about with, gemstones and crystals. In fact, I don't think it typically comes up very much in my conversations. However, I do think that's a fabulous question, because if we think about gemstones and crystals, there was definitely bedrock that they kind of grew and lived within. It was out of that bedrock that they arose. That bedrock is the matrix. It's what holds that stone in a secure place. And I brought some stones with matrix so that you can take a look. So here is an example of a piece of amethyst. It's got some calcite in there as well. And so we often will see pieces of these amethyst chunks, and we don't usually look at the bottom. This is the bedrock. This is the bedrock, the matrix out of which this stone grew. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you have stones or crystals and gemstones at home already with you, that you have some of the bedrock right there, some of that matrix. It helps hold the stone together. I've had pieces of clusters of amethyst, and sometimes the bedrock starts getting loose, that matrix gets loose, and then those little tiny points fall off. Not a problem, they just become individual points rather than the full cluster. Here is an example of, let me see how I can hold this so you can see this. So you can see a fair amount of matrix. I love this one because look at, there's so many little fissures where the clear quartz points are growing out of. And even here, you may not be able to see it very well, but it's very, very, it looks shiny to me, but what it is called is druzy, and it's like teeny tiny little clusters that were in the process of growing when this came out of its bedrock. So much of that matrix is still there. They make beautiful pieces. They're just lovely. Here is a piece of schist, which is the matrix within which we have 3 small almandine garnets. You can see the garnets. And there actually had been one other one right here, but that fell out. So when you have a stone or stones that are embedded in its matrix, be gentle with them because sometimes they can loosen up and then it's not quite the same. Here's a piece of opal. Look at this beautiful matrix. This really gives you a glimpse into what goes on inside the earth, doesn't it? So look at the stones that you may have at home, the crystals you may have at home, and see if there are any that have some of the matrix attached. It's very common. Sometimes I'm looking around my table here. I don't think I see any others right now, but sometimes you'll actually see pieces of the matrix kind of in a little bit on the inside as well. It's all really wonderful. And it tells a story about the stones as well. Okay, so here's a question. What are your 3 favorite crystals to work with and why are they your favorite? I get asked that question a lot, and maybe you do too. If you have any number of crystals that somebody finds out that you work with gemstones and rocks, they may ask you the same question. So I often will work with gemstones and crystals that I feel I'm really being pulled to work with for particular reasons, but there are 3 that I do really find I like a lot. One of them is udilite. Now, udilite is a stone that connects with the earth and also connects with the heart. And when I think of earth energy, and you've probably heard me say it before if you've worked with me for a bit, my sense is there are 2 threads of energy that come up from the earth when we think about that earth energy that supports us. One is kind of a red, the ruby that is in our gem water. That would be an example of this red, vital earth energy. The other is more of a green hue, this nurturing energy. And that's why I like working with udilite, because the udilite draws up both of those strands of energy, brings them all the way up into the heart chakra. My sense is that as we work on polishing our heart sphere, as we work on healing physical, emotional, mental, spiritual issues that arise in our lives, what we're really in the process of doing is becoming more human. And to become more human, it means to be in our physical body and not up through the top of our head. And yet it also means inviting that healing and that becoming who we really are into our heart chakra. And that's why I often will work with stones that resonate with the earth and also resonate with some water, which has a lot to do with that flow of healing. So Udilite is one of my favorites. Another one I like to work with quite a bit is rainforest jasper. So rainforest jasper, also known as rhyolite, is, and you can see it, has so much of this beautiful green energy. And this nurturing energy of the earth is often what we need. That red vital energy can be very helpful when we're depleted. It's like we need a little bit of a boost, a recharge. If we have an electric vehicle, we need to go and plug it in. That red thread of energy from the earth helps us reboot our energy field. It's the greens that are the nurturing. And I just really feel like these days there's so much going on in our world that we can maybe want to run and throw our hands up and climb out the top of our head. Yet we really are, again, being invited to be here and to hold in compassion and prayer and be very mindful of how we show up in the world so that we can transform our lives and the lives of those around us. That's what I find that the rainforest jasper is able to support with, because it brings that earth energy up and again gets it into that heart chakra. And my sense is anytime we are bringing energy up through the earth and into the heart chakra, it cannot get to the heart chakra if it does not go through that root, sacral, and solar plexus chakra. So those are the physical, emotional, and mental aspects of our life, and we have to move those energies through those three to get them into the heart space. There is no bypassing straight from the earth into the heart. It just doesn't work that way in my experience. And then the third stone I like to work with a lot is chrysoprase. Chrysoprase is so cool. It's a soothing stone. It is a water element stone, and it really supports the throat. It supports a calming of the emotional and nervous systems. And so I love working with this. It has such a tender energy and a tender frequency that if you have not worked with chrysoprase, I would invite you and encourage you to begin to take a look at that. It's just a very, very lovely stone. And if you're not familiar with it, you can certainly go out to my online shop and take a look at it so you can learn more about it. Maybe you have a piece and you don't remember that you have it. So those are the three stones that I would say are my favorites. Yet I couldn't resist. I had to bring one more group of stones. And you know, there's another question. Is there a best time of day to work with stones, gemstone water? Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Anytime is a good time. And the important thing when you're working with gemstones and crystals is to realize you do need to work with them for a while. They need to be in your energy field. So it may be that for me, on a day, I want to work with this rainforest jasper, that I'm going to hold it in my hand during my prayer and meditation practice. And I'm going to invite healing and my connection with the stone and its properties to move into my energy field. Then I may choose to put that in a pocket throughout the day. It could be that I know I'm going to be on the go, I'm going to be super busy, and I don't have any pockets that day that I'm going to be wearing. You can slip this underneath your pillowcase with the intention of what you're asking for that relationship with the stone and you to have that night, and then sleep with it. The idea around that is that you are engaging within your energy field and the stone's energy field together for maybe 6 to 8 hours. That is sufficient. Then you can leave that at home and go about your day. You still have that frequency within your energy field. Now, I will say that there are times when you pick up a stone, you go, I'm going to work with this rainforest jasper. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do a little bit of prayer meditation, and within about 10 minutes, you get a hit, you go, whoa, I'm done. You can set that aside. That stone actually did its work within that short period of time. You have to be mindful, though. This is not a thinking mind. This is going into that quieter place and touching into the instincts and intuition within us. So that, I hope, answers the question. If you're working with a gem water like this one, after it has set perhaps in the refrigerator for like overnight is a good amount, you can just sip on that throughout the day. Probably sipping on it throughout the day is better than just glugging all at once, because it just gives you a little bit more of that essence throughout the day, or the gem water rather. Now that question really ties in actually with this little pouch I brought, because I was asked in the question, what were my 3 favorite? And sometimes it's just not that easy. A couple of weeks ago, I just had a real sense that I was really sensing I needed to work with a stone that represented each of the 7 chakras, and I needed to keep those with me. So I took a little pouch, you see, nothing fancy. And I like putting them in there, and then I will tie this right around my belt loop or stick it in a pocket, and the fabric is rough enough that it doesn't slip out like a regular stone would. I'm going to show you what I ended up working with. It was actually several days in a row where I had that little pouch tied to me. I'm just looking to see. Okay. So I had a piece of red jasper in that pouch. Wonderful stone for that root chakra, really supporting very clearing and a very much of a cleansing stone. Then for the second chakra, I had a piece of natural citrine. Citrine's kind of fiery. It's a family, the quartz family, and it helps support the active kind of fiery energy of that second chakra. I had a piece of tiger's eye to represent the third chakra, and that particular stone, I love tiger's eye. It could probably be one of my favorites, right? Because it pulls earth energy up, it pulls sun energy down, and it meets right at the solar plexus, that right below our rib cage, above our navel is our solar plexus. And this is such a wonderful stone to support personal power and integrity, because there are always times when we're going to feel like the bully, and there are times we're going to feel like the victim, neither of which demonstrates that we have a particularly strong third chakra. So this is helping us to stay in our lane, so to speak, when it comes to power. So that was for the third chakra. Fourth chakra was the heart chakra, was a piece of ruby fusite. Now here's that ruby again. Do you see a little theme going with me in ruby? I do love that stone. This also, as you can see, has both pink and green, kind of that red theme energy, and that more nurturing green sense of energy coming up from the earth, right into that heart chakra. Throat chakra, surprise, surprise, another piece of chrysoprase, just like I talked about before, being one of my favorite stones. It has all these wonderful inclusions. It's always tricky with that. Camera doesn't always focus right. And that's for the throat chakra, helping to clear and allow expression. Then for the brow chakra, piece of rainbow fluorite, as you can see all the various hues. I think I talked about rainbow fluorite, I feel like last month. Keep in mind that with rainbow fluorite is a piece of fluorite that has a wide variety of colors. It could be purple, it could be yellow, it could be clear, it could be green, it could be a lavender. And yet you might actually get a piece of fluorite that's labeled rainbow fluorite, but it might only be purple, or it might only be green, or it might only be white or clear. That's okay. It depends on what part of the stone did you get, okay? And then for the top of the head, crown chakra, piece of chevron amethyst. Chevron amethyst, also known as banded amethyst, is a combination of both amethyst and then white quartz. And so you get these distinctive bands of white. And it's called chevron because very often it'll have that chevron pattern, that V kind of structure, and you'll see that in many pieces of chevron. So those were all in this little pouch and tied to my belt loop for several days. I didn't sleep with them. That would have been quite uncomfortable. Again, remember, I'd been engaging with those stone energies all day, so I could easily set them aside at night. So I hope that gives you an idea of how to, first of all, begin to think about what might your favorite stones be and why, right? I'm just going to put these all over here. So there's another question, and actually I think I'm going to move one stone over here because you'll see why I did that in just a second. So the question is, what is the difference between agate and jasper? Aren't they the same thing? That's a good question because they all are essentially a form of quartz. So if we take a look at this rose quartz, and then we can't take a look at the Tibetan quartz because it also is in our gem water. Even though they're quartz, silicon dioxide, they look quite a bit different. That's because the more pointed, terminated, clear quartz that you might be used to seeing has a structure that it grows in a very straight and pointed fashion. Rose quartz almost always does not. It is known as a cryptocrystalline, which means that if you were to take a look at it in a microscope, you'd see the same patterning that you see in some of these larger pieces of quartz, like even this piece of amethyst, which is a form of quartz, has these more visible points. It's a cryptocrystalline. And agates and jaspers also are cryptocrystalline forms of quartz, and they have different minerals in them, which is why they have some different colorings. So I think a good way for us to kind of explain this is, first of all, I have a piece of blue chalcedony. Chalcedony is a form of quartz. It's a cryptocrystalline form of quartz. And you can see that it's really quite almost translucent. Might be easier for me to see it than you. But when we have a cryptocrystalline quartz that's translucent, we typically refer to that as a chalcedony. Then, if we have a piece of chalcedony that's now presenting banding, we're going to call that an agate. So here is a piece of blue lace agate, and it actually is blue chalcedony with white quartz, just like this banded amethyst with white quartz. But because this is a cryptocrystalline quartz, starts as chalcedony, now it has these bandings of other minerals, and in this case, white quartz, now it's going to be referred to as blue lace agate. Carnelian is also an agate. It is typically a band. Sometimes you won't see the banding as much, but it's, again, considered more like a banded agate, even though we don't often refer to it that way. If you were to take a look at some photos of carnelian, and I think on my webpage in my shop, I actually have a picture that shows a variety of different types of carnelian, some of which have beautiful banding, and so those would be considered agates. Now, if we take that same cryptocrystalline silicon dioxide, and now it becomes actually opaque, now what we've got is jasper. So here's the red jasper that I carried around for several days, an opaque form of cryptocrystalline quartz. Here's an example of yellow jasper. Again, cryptocrystalline quartz, but because it's opaque, we tend to call it jasper. So that is what I would say is a simple way of explaining it. Chalcedony is translucent, agates are banded, opaque is jasper. Okay, good. Okay, so here's a fun question, and perhaps something that you've maybe thought about. I am new to crystal healing. What books can you suggest? Okay, so there are tons and tons of books on crystals. Some of them are helpful. Actually, some aren't quite so helpful. Some of them look really pretty, have beautiful photographs, but don't necessarily have a lot of content. So the first thing I would say is think about, what do you want? Why are you looking for a particular book? Are you looking for a book that will kind of be multi-purpose? It'll give you some nice photographs. It'll give you some context around mineralogy and the various aspects of geology, and then move into the crystals. Are you looking for stones that are really supporting, or books that are supporting your understanding of some of the metaphysical aspects and healing aspects and components of stones? So those are a couple different ways you can look at it. I would say one of my first, and probably I would say I recommend a go-to book, is The Crystal Bible by Judy Hall. Judy is out of the UK, and she's been working in the crystal healing field for decades. I like this book because she's small, it's succinct. She talks, she gives us some basic geology. For some of us, it's been a while since we took a geology class. She talks about the care of stones. She talks about a little bit about the energy field. So if you are wanting to work with stones in alignment with the various energy centers or chakras, you have a little bit of an idea on that. She also then goes into, in this particular volume, a really good selection of a number of different stones. Here, for example, she talks about selenite and a lot of information about a number of different stones. She has gone on to publish several additional volumes from this first one as more and more stones are being discovered, and that she's exploring more of them. Another suggestion I would have is go out on my webpage. Right on the homepage, I actually have a free ebook on crystal healing, and it will give you kind of an overview of how to work with gemstones and crystals for healing purposes. And because it's an ebook, it is linked to areas within my own webpage and my shop where you can learn more about some of the different stones. So I really think that it would be a real helpful for you to get clear on what do you want the book to do. Are you looking for kind of a nice beginning point, which can really serve you well for a very long time? Are you looking at wanting to make grids? There are a lot of books out there on making grids. And I would say if you're really looking into that and really want to expand your understanding about how to work with crystal grids in a wide variety of ways, I would encourage you to take a look at my crystal grids courses that I offer through my online school. I have a free creating crystal grid mini course, and then I have a crystal grids 1 course as well that actually comes with 20 stones that you can work with and a number of different grid templates. So start small. Let me know if you have questions that you're just finding aren't able to be addressed within maybe a book you have. So I have another question in the chat. Am I able to schedule a time with you just to discuss what you have talked about today? What would you suggest? Yes, thank you for that. Yes, there are a couple ways we can do that. Perhaps what I'm talking about today just prompts a question, and you can send me an email, you can give me a call, you can chat through my webpage, and if it's a real quick question, I'm more than happy to just get back to you on that. However, there are many times where it's not just one question, and I do offer crystal healing sessions. I also offer mentoring sessions, and that is typically an hour long, and it is about any topic. I have a lot of clients who I work with for mentoring that have to do with their own healing work that they're doing. I have mentoring sessions for people who are working with crystal healing and wanting to really explore that. So reach out to me and I can certainly tell you more about that. If you do decide that, you know what, I'd like to have a crystal mentoring session, definitely call me. We will talk, and I will encourage you to bring your stones with so that we can really work with the stones that you've got as well. So those are a couple different ways that you can do it, but that's a great question. Thank you for that. Okay, so here's a question, and I think this is really an important question. I go into quite a bit of detail in my online particularly advanced course. But the question is, I've heard you talk about stones that are toxic. What does that mean? Which stones do I need to be careful with? I have talked about this a little bit, and because I've been doing a number of these monthly crystal Q&As, my mind kind of gets a little mixed up as to what month I covered it. But malachite is one that definitely comes to mind right away, and it's because of its high copper content. I'm going to review some of the other substances that we need to be very careful with. But malachite is one that it is not polished. It can get very dusty. So this is, again, why when we are working with creating gem waters, and even when we are working, let's say you're studying with me and you are doing an advanced course and you are learning how to make gem essences and gem elixirs, we're still doing the indirect method. I talk about how to do direct, but I don't teach it because I think it is not necessary. It's just not necessary, okay? It's going to be equally effective when we bring intention and prayer and meditation and a real serious intent on creating a relationship with the stone, so that they're not something magical that's happening in that water. It's a shared relationship. So malachite, because of its copper, it would be toxic if we put it directly in the water. Sulfur is another one. In fact, I wrote down some of the real common minerals because I just really want to make sure I don't miss any. So certain minerals are considered toxic, and we're going to want to be mindful of them. There are too many stones to actually rattle off all of them because it's like a couple pages easily, if not more. So here's what you want to be aware of. You want to be aware of copper and aluminum and sulfur. A couple months ago, I think it was, I talked about jaspers a little bit more in depth, and I talked about bumblebee jasper, which actually isn't a jasper, it's sulfur. Well, we know that sulfur is considered toxic. So there's nothing wrong with having, let's say, an egg-shaped piece of sulfur or bumblebee jasper. I do not carry it in my shop because of its toxicity. And I would encourage you that if you do have tumbled pieces, that you're always washing your hands when you're done with them. And those would be the kind that you might want to put in a little cage that you can slip around your neck. They have some little cages that you can swap out stones, and that's nice. You could put it in a little pouch. Just don't carry it in your hand directly. Arsenic actually shows up as a mineral in some of the various gemstones that are out there. Asbestos, we know that doesn't turn out very well. Mercury, highly toxic. Lead, there is a beautiful stone called galena. Again, I won't carry it. I do not carry toxic stones that are really quite dangerous. I do carry malachite. I'm very careful to make sure that my stones, which are all hand selected, are going to not have nicks where you're going to have that potential test exposure. So be very mindful of what it is that you are holding. And you can Google toxic gemstones, and you will, seriously, you'll get a list of about 2 to 3 pages. So it's more important that you're working with the stone. You go, what is this stone? You can go to mindat.org, and that is a wonderful mineral database that is not woo-woo, healing, new agey at all, even though I don't believe crystal healing is. It is geologically based, and it will tell you what's in those stones. So be very careful. If you have any doubt, send me a text or send me an email, and I'd be happy to answer that question for you. A question I keep getting a lot is that people really want to have a little bit better sense of what's going on with my school and how they can connect with that online school. So my online school actually rolled out 2+ years ago when COVID put the brakes on my in-person courses and classes. And so I've created a wide variety of courses that are self-paced. You work through the content at your own pace. There are points along the way where there is actually a whole lesson is just to pause and have a mentoring session with me. This is an example of a person who's studying with me either for energy healing or Usui Reiki or crystal healing, actually is able to have individual one-on-one, in-person or virtual time of meeting, and that goes on throughout the courses. The other thing, if you're new to my online school, I have several free mini courses. Sometimes we just need to get our feet wet a little bit, and that's a nice way to do it. And actually, one of them is a global meditation that we can do. Our world really needs a lot of help, and we are responsible for nurturing and healing ourselves and our part of the world. So look for the links below. If you have questions, you can let me know. Actually, if you are kind of kicking around whether you want to take a course or not, I do have a back to school special that runs this month and then through October to be able to have a discount for some of those courses as well. So, or in fact, all of them. So you can take a look at that. So there's only one question we didn't get to, and that's okay. We will start off with that next month. I really want to thank you all for these questions. Some of them may seem like they go back to the basics, which is exactly what they do, because we always go back to the basics. We're never so far along with our training that we don't go back and we reconnect with some of those initial teachings that we received so that we can more deeply understand, the depth that is coming out of them. So in recap, tomorrow we're going to have a gem water, very simple to make. You can maybe even want to do one yet today. Just make sure your bowls and glass jars are all really clean. And we've explored some of the ways that rocks show up in the most unexpected places. So I invite you to let me know if you have questions. Next month, we will be connecting again on Wednesday, October 12th, again, 6 to 7 p.m. Central. Looking forward to the ways that you're able to continue to explore crystal healing and how you can let me know how I can help. I do want to let you know that we will be starting off next month talking about how do we work with gemstones and crystals and work with kids, and how can we help kids get engaged in a way that meets kids where they're at developmentally and interest level. And again, boy, we can learn so much from our beautiful little friends that we love so much. So have a wonderful month. Let me know if you have questions. Have fun with creating gem waters, and I look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday, October 12th. 6 p.m. Many blessings. Be well.